What's up, everybody? It's Justin with Supreme Suspensions. Today we've got an oldie but goodie running a Hummer H2 in the shop. We're going to be installing our 3-inch adjustable torsion keys using our torsion key tool. We've got our 2-inch billet rear lift kit, which we also have available in fabricated steel. Today we're going to be installing a set of extended Pro Comp shocks, but we do also have a set of front shock extenders and rear shock extenders for this application in case the shocks aren't something you're going to go with. Let's go ahead and get the vehicle in the shop and get started. All right, we've got the Hummer up in the air, safe on the hoist. We're going to go ahead and take the wheels off and get started on the suspension kit. All right, so we've got the front tires off. We're going to go ahead and start on the front suspension. On the torsion key trucks, it's actually pretty simple. Not a whole lot you have to take apart in the front end. You are going to remove the shock absorbers. If you've got new shocks, go ahead and take the top and bottom mounts off. If you're using your OEM shocks or using the shock extender kits that we offer, just go ahead and remove the bottom mounting bolt. We're also going to disconnect the sway bar attachment. The top nut is integrated into the bushing, and it's a little bit of an awkward size. Your best bet is to use a set of channel locks, get a good grip on it, and pull the bolt out from the bottom. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, now that the shocks are out and the sway bar is disconnected, we're going to go ahead and move underneath the truck to get the torsion keys out. All right, so now we're underneath the truck and we're at the torsion bar at the torsion keys. Torsion bar assembly runs back into the key, which you'll see from this other angle. And this is what we're going to be removing and replacing with our lift key. There's a couple of components here to pay attention to. This block is a threaded block that holds the adjuster bolt for the torsion key. On the torsion key, there are 2 dimples. One dimple is what this bolt goes into, the adjuster bolt. The other dimple is for the torsion tool to be able to unload it. Before you unload anything, before you start undoing these, it's really important to count how many threads you have showing. You can also measure it with a tape measure or a caliper if you'd like. Counting threads is quick and easy. This is going to be a base point for reinstallation. Reinstalling at those same amount of threads is going to get you about 2 inches of lift at the front end. And you can adjust from there all the way up to 3 plus depending on the application, or bring it down if you want to level it out a little bit. We're going to use our torsion key tool. This goes over the cross member. It includes a small saddle. The saddle has a pin in it. Up on top of the cross member, there's a small hole located above the torsion key. There's a little slot. This pin on the saddle is going to sit right in there. This helps prevent the tool from slipping back and forth on the cross member while we're using it to compress the torsion key. We'll go ahead and pop the saddle and the locating pin in there. We're going to take the U-bolt from our tool, come up and over the cross member, and make sure to feel up on top that the tool is sitting in that saddle that's in that little retaining slot up on top. If you have another application where the secondary cross member is in the way for this U-bolt, we do offer another tool. It's a C-channel style that goes over one side. It's mostly on the light duty stuff, but that is an option if you need it. Next, we're going to take the block and compression assembly for the tool. We're going to slide it up over the U-bolt. We're going to start to run this up a bit of a ways into the torsion key. And take the nuts for the compression block and start threading those on. Now I've got the tool all set up. We're going to run the compression bolt down to take tension off of the torsion key. You're not trying to over compress it, you're just getting enough tension off it to be able to pull the adjuster bolt out. Strongly, strongly recommend do not use an impact on this. It would last, but you're going to beat the threads up more than you want to. So we're going to use hand tools to compress that. Now we're up just enough. You can see the adjuster bolt wiggles free. That means you've got enough slack in it to start pulling that adjuster bolt out. So now with the adjuster bolt out, we're going to go ahead and remove that stopping block. So go ahead and push from one side, slide it out of the cross member, and now all that's taken apart. Now we're going to go ahead and slowly and easily remove tension off that torsion key and let it hang free. Now with this side ready to be removed, we don't have to take the tool back off. We can slide it off to the side, get it out of our way, since you're going to use it for reinstallation. Now to remove the torsion key itself, the torsion bar has to slide forward and free itself from the key. If you've got a vehicle with a lot of mileage or a lot of corrosion on there, that may be a little hard. We suggest spraying some penetrating oil in there between the hex and the torsion key, and also on the lower control arm in the front where the torsion key enters the arm. That's going to be the best bet of being able to get the thing free and remove it most easily. All right, we've had some penetrating oil sitting on the front lower control arm with the torsion bar and back here on the torsion key. We're going to go ahead and slide it out and remove it. You may still need a little bit of extra force. Sometimes a pry bar up between the torsion bar, the torsion key, and the cross member will help. Some light wiggling while you slide the bar forward should help you get it out. Make sure to keep a hand over the torsion key the whole time, or at least over part of it, because once it does come off, it's going to want to drop out of the cross member. You don't want that coming down and hitting you. All right, now I've got the old torsion key out. We've got the new torsion key here. If you compare it to the old one, you can kind of see that it's been re-indexed. That's what's going to provide the lift to the torsion bar. When you reinstall it, you want it as close to the original position as possible. That's going to be brought down just a little bit from where it originally started. We're going to put that up in the cross member. Slide the torsion bar back into the new key. And make sure you look up inside there to see that the torsion bar is actually coming out the back of the key. That'll let you know it's engaged enough. Now we're going to use that compression tool again to get the new key loaded up into the cross member and get that stop block back inside. Now, something to keep in mind when you go to do this, it's the second dimple in the key that you're going to be using to compress it. The adjuster bolt is going to go into that first dimple. If you get the tool onto that first dimple, you're not going to be able to reinstall the adjuster bolt. So now that we're in the second dimple, our key is engaged with our bar fully. We have the tool safely mounted in the cross member with that saddle. We're going to go ahead and start tightening this and raise the torsion key up into the cross member. Now we need to go high enough so that that stop block can go back through the cross member and be beneath the torsion key. Now that the key is compressed up above that opening for the stop block, we're going to reinstall the stop block. Good little tip here is prior to doing that, make sure to clean up the threads of any gunk and stuff that's built up over the years. It's going to make it a lot easier when you go to actually put the adjuster bolt back through it. Let's go ahead and do that real quick and get this back installed. All right, now we've got the threads cleaned up from all the old road grime. We're going to go ahead and reinstall the block. Pay attention in the orientation. The semicircular face on here is going to face down in the cross member and match that semicircular cutout in the cross member. Make sure that drops over all the way. Those two semicircular faces are kind of like a saddle, and they'll mate to the cross member. Now that we have the adjuster bolt run up onto the torsion key, something you want to pay attention to is whether or not that adjuster bolt made it into the dimple. Because the torsion key can move back and forth in the cross member just a little bit, you want to peek over the top there and make sure it's sitting in there. If it's not, you can get a pry bar or a flat screwdriver up to the side of the torsion bar and kind of give it a little pry in either direction to get it to seat. All right, now that the adjuster bolt's seated in the torsion key, we can go ahead and run up a little bit more pressure on it and then remove the compression tool. So now we've got this set and we have the tool loose. We can go ahead and slide the tool over instead of removing it entirely because you're going to use it on the other side when we go to do the install on the passengers. Originally we had about 10 threads showing on this adjuster bolt. We're going to go the full 3 inches on this vehicle, so we're going to lessen that by about 3 or 4 threads. So we're going to crank it down to go from the 10 threads down to about 6 and then measure the height after we get the truck on the ground. We're going to go ahead and start and repeat the process on the other side. All right, we've got the torsion keys installed on both sides for the vehicle. We're going to go ahead and reassemble the front end by installing the new extended shocks and reattaching the sway bar. When you install the new shocks, go ahead and check your bushing orientation. Make sure it's set up to meet with the shock mounting hole correctly. We're going to reinstall the lower shock mounting bolt and then come back and tighten up that top stud. Now we'll go ahead and move on to that sway bar link. All right, now the front end's reassembled. We've already got the other side done, so we're gonna go ahead and move to the back of this H2 and get the rear coil spacers installed. All right, so now we're at the back of the H2 getting ready to install the rear lift kit. We're gonna start doing that by removing the rear sway bar mounts and removing the rear shocks. If you're gonna reuse your OEM shocks, you can just unbolt the lower shock mount. In this case, we're gonna replace them with extended length shocks, so we're gonna take the upper and lower shock mounts off. Before we start, we have to support the axle. You're gonna do that from both sides. That way you can actually pivot the axle enough to get the coil spring spacers in. We're doing it with spin jacks on the hoist. If you're working on the floor, a set of floor jacks works just fine. All right, now we have to repeat this process on the other side to make sure we have full articulation of the axle to get the spacers in. All right, with the shocks and the sway bar disconnected from both sides, we can slowly lower the axle to make room for the coil spacers and unseat the coils from the axle. All right, so we're gonna slowly lower the axle one side at a time so we can get the spring free and get the coil spacer installed. We go ahead and clean up any dust or excess stuff that's built up around the isolator pad. We are going to reuse the isolator pad on the new spacer. So now I have the coil spacer. I'm going to install the isolator pad on top of the spacer, get the spacer down onto the axle, and hope we've got enough room to get the coil spring back on top. If not, we can manipulate the axle a little more to provide enough space. In a worst case, if you're working with a real tall rear lift, like a 3-inch or somewhere in that range, you can always put a coil spring compressor on the coil to help you with the installation. Good. All right, now we'll bring this side up under a little bit of compression so we can drop the passenger side as far as we can. All right, now with both spacers installed on the rear end, we're gonna go ahead and reattach the sway bar links and install the new extended length rear shocks. The shocks are gonna reuse the OEM hardware for installation. Your bushings will likely come disassembled, put a light bit of grease on them, get the sleeves through, and install the bushings into the eyelets. All right, we finished up the rear of the installation. Let's get this thing a little lower to the ground and get these 35s back on the truck to see how it looks.